see is coming through. Bring that down a bit. Okay, I think we are live. Guys, we are going to be talking today about healing your sciatica. I wanted to take the opportunity to help you guys understand a little bit about the healing process that is taking place. Now, fundamentally, it's obviously not going to be the sciatica that we are healing. We are improving the sciatica, we're improving the back pain, the sciatic type pain, but we are really healing the injury that is down here in the lumbar spine. That's what we're really focused on healing. And hopefully this is going to really help some of you guys understand the process and also, more importantly, have a roadmap as to how things are going to be going forwards so that you don't trip yourselves up a little bit further on down the line. And so I wanted to use my eye as an example. And if you guys have any questions here, any comments, back pain, sciatica, herniated disc, all that kind of stuff, then please do post them down in the comment section. I will get to those as soon as I can. So the first and most important thing is to understand what happens when we injure ourselves, right? And make no mistake, everybody's focused on back pain and sciatica, which is why I use the title for this video, because that's the verbiage that people use when they describe it, but because that's what bothers you. But there is the injury at the root cause, which is what we're trying to address. In the case of my eye, we obviously had the grazed there. In the case of you guys, it's that bulging disc, it's the damage to the ligaments, it's the segmental injury. And when we first have that injury, the body lays down scar tissue. That is the scab formation. And the reason I use the surface wound is because it helps you guys appreciate what's going on in the lower back, because it doesn't exist in your mind. You don't have so often that representation of what's going on. And if we can force that representation, it can help our understanding so we don't trip ourselves up. So to start with, there is this scar tissue laydown. We form a scab, for example. And then it goes through the scar tissue that's been dumped in that area. In the case of our discs, in the case of our spinal ligaments, etc. It's been dumped in that area. And then it needs to undergo a process of remodeling. The body will then, in an intelligent manner, break down that scar tissue, reconstitute it. In the case of the ligaments, it's going to be laying down collagen matrix in that area to reinforce the fibers and rebuild them. Because your disc, for example, looked like this before. We've got the fluid in the middle, and we've got these layers of annulus fibrosis running around the side. And then the nucleus broke through some of those damaged layers, and so on and so forth, to the point where we had the herniation. And so understanding that is important. Now what's happening is your body's just laying down a load of scar tissue where that damage has taken place. And then it's going to remodel it. And then over the course of time, it's going to go through a strengthening process, strengthening of the tissues. Now in the case of the eye, it doesn't really go through strengthening because it's the surface, it's the skin, right? But in the case of load-bearing tissues, in particular, muscles, ligaments, tendons, the discs of the spine, they really do need to go through that strengthening process, or it's a longer process. And so we have to also respect the fact that these tissues heal in very, very different time frames. The skin here heals relatively quickly. Although you guys will have seen from the videos, it's taking a bit of time to go through healing. It doesn't help when you knock the scab off, right? Which is why it's all red today from yesterday. The discs, the ligamentous structures, those of you guys that have additional issues like hamstring tendonitis and those kind of things, they remodel much more slowly. The discs particularly, because they're always under strain, a little bit slower than your average ligament when they're damaged. So they're going through a very slow process. Once the scab is formed, you often won't have pain. Once a certain level of healing has taken place, you often won't have pain. This doesn't hurt. It does today because it's a little bit raw from yesterday knocking the scab off, or the other day. But I can poke it. It doesn't hurt. Okay? If I poke it hard, if I increase the strain on the tissue, it will hurt. And it's the same with your lower back. So too many of you judge your healing on how you feel. How you feel is irrelevant. I mean saying that maybe in a bit of an exaggerated manner. It's obviously got some relevance. But in terms of healing, how you feel is quite low down on the indicators. And what happens is, too many of you guys go, oh, I feel better. So you start doing a bunch of other stuff, not considering the strain that might or might not be going through the body. And therefore you end up tripping yourself up because it's not healed. A towel knocked off the scab, even though it didn't hurt. I shouldn't have bits of my skin falling off when I bump my skin, but it happened here because it's not healed. It's healing. And that process, that vulnerable process, is a lot longer for many of you guys. which is why you get, and so many people will minimize what they do on a daily basis to the point where they're just kind of getting by, doing hardly anything. And they're like, oh, I'm okay, I don't have pain. As long as I don't know, move too quickly. That's not living. That's not living, right? You're shrinking down. Maybe it's necessary for a period of time, but it should be done in conjunction with the rebuilding process. And so this trips people up, this reality of not considering the healing in the lower back. And that's where strengthening work comes in. Because if you're doing your rehabilitation work properly, and this comes over to the question, what do you recommend? Clara has said, what do you recommend after back surgery? Had a hernia L5, S1, it's been 4 to 5 months. We should be doing rehabilitation work. Why? Because when we start performing, for example, a squat, or learning to perform a squat with load, we realize, I'm not so good at this. I can go to here, but then I go to here and it falls apart. Or I'm wobbling all over the place. Or when I do a step up, I actually, I'm tilting my pelvis all over the shop. It's not really working so good for me. I'm doing all of those sorts of things. And so you get a humbling experience that you're actually not very good at controlling yourself. Or you realize that I can do a squat with body weight, but if I grab a 5 or 10 kilo weight, I start to run into a bit of trouble. That load is a bit too much. That would make sense if I'm struggling to sit down for any length of time as well. You've injured a load-bearing structure. And so that's really important. We need to, as soon as possible, to Clara's question, we need to be working on our rehabilitation, which starts with very low strain things. And the point is, for those of you guys in the program, the rehab work that you guys are doing, the strengthening work that you guys are doing, I say strengthening, but strengthening comes, you earn the right to do strengthening. So when you start phase 1, when you get into phase 2, etc., you are still practicing very much the technical side of things. Then in phase 3, for example, of the program, we explore the process of safely finding the right level of intensity to actually engender a strengthening process. But too often, people in Clara's position specifically will be in a scenario where you're getting given no guidance whatsoever and you're just left on your own. Well, no wonder we're still perhaps struggling, right? We should be doing proper rehabilitation work. Just looking through some of the other comments over here. Is it okay to do hamstring and glute stretching? I have spondylosis. It is, but you must be doing your stretching with a neutral spine, and do not focus on stretching alone. You should be doing strengthening work, and the stretching work is temporary. Too many people get caught up on the flexibility of their hamstrings, the flexibility of their glutes. They're tight. Why are they tight? Let's explore it. Because the segments down here in the lower lumbar spine, they control your glutes, they control your hamstrings. It's part of the course that you're going to have tightness in those muscles. Now, for some of you guys, it's actually not objective tightness, i.e. shortening of the muscle. It's just a feeling of tension. But for a lot of you guys, it is actually objective shortening of the muscle. You're going to drive yourself mad if you're constantly trying to stretch it, expecting some long-term results. You have to build strengthening. Why? Because as you build strengthening and you learn how to control and protect this area, you aggravate it less. So the healing can take place, so inflammation can calm down here, so the signals that are going to tell these muscles to do peculiar things, tightness, etc., dysfunction, start to abate. So your stretching actually has more cumulative benefits. So we must make sure that we are doing the right sort of thing. That's the pairing of the relief-based work with the rehabilitation-based work. Rehabilitation is building strength and resilience back into the lumbar spine. The stretching is something that we can do to provide a momentary or temporary relief in the tissues. Temporary being the key word, because after you've stretched, you tighten back up again when you do things. Just looking at some more comments before we come over to YouTube. I'm having a nerve blocker in my L5 next week. Will I have physio after? Paula, that tells me you have not got the appropriate level of support. The fact that you're asking that question, and I don't mean this at all to chastise you specifically, but more so those that are recommending that treatment or recommending that line of inquiry. If you have it, you should be able to say, I've got an injection. This is what, if you've appropriately been recommended an injection by a good establishment, let's say, be it a clinic, be it the hospital, wherever it is, you would be able to say to me, hey, Mike, I'm having an injection on Friday afternoon next week. It's at this level, grade L5, right? It's a nerve block or whatever it may be. You might not necessarily need to know or need to be able to recall the exact details of precisely what it is, but you understand you're having an injection next week. And I've got rehab booked in for the day after. I've already had some consultations about what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be starting my spine rehabilitation stuff already, and I'm going to follow it on afterwards, and. You'd have detail. It wouldn't be a case of, will I have physio? That should already have been discussed. The answer should be yes. You should be having physio. Because remember, what is the injection doing, the nerve blocker doing? It is the equivalent of being sat in your living room or you're in your kitchen with the smoke alarm going off because there is a fire on the stove. The nerve blocker is the equivalent of just taking the batteries out of the alarm. That is what the nerve blocker is doing while the fire continues to rage on. Your rehab is addressing the fire. If someone's not discussing with you the fact that you should be having rehab alongside of the injection, or that you at least have an appointment booked in to discuss that immediately, I would suggest that's a real problem. Because the simple fact of the matter is you're going to go home and do a bunch of stuff which you've had no guidance on whatsoever, and you're not making the most of a procedure that you haven't probably taken lightly. Just looking through some of the other comments here, I've had a microdiscectomy 7 weeks ago, been offered physio, I found one privately, is it too soon? Guys, understand, like, what did you do after you've had the microdiscectomy? You got out of bed, and this is worthy of discussion with your surgeon. You got out of bed, the hospital bed, you got in the car, you drove home, got out of the car, you get dressed at some point along there. You've probably sat on the toilet seat between now and then. If you had any sort of complications from the medications, a bit of constipation, you've probably strained a little bit, right? On the toilet seat. I'm being graphic here to just illustrate the point. You've done a ton of stuff in this time frame that has been putting strain on your back. And you've had no guidance whatsoever in that process. Now, either there's apathy towards the importance of the process after having the surgery, something that you did not take on lightly, or, you know, we're missing something, right? And the idea that any of those things that I just mentioned are less strenuous than that, or lying on the bed wiggling your leg is farcical. So your rehab needs to meet you where you are and be conservative, of course. Now, the question is, with regards to the physio that you're having, it depends entirely what they're going to do. Because I was speaking to someone only in the last few days, their physio was giving them post-surgery, post-microdiscectomy, just like this, knee hugs, child's pose, and cat-cow. I wouldn't be doing that, period, if you're recovering from a lower back injury. So that's just something to bear in mind. Hopefully that's helpful, guys. Just looking through the last few bits. I had no direction other than walk. Hey, there we go. That is the standard guidance, right? I had no direction after my microdiscectomy other than walk, don't lift, and probably maybe like don't bend and don't twist and that kind of stuff, right? So common, unfortunately. I'm really sorry to hear that. Check out the link in the profile page. I've got, is chiro or physio better for spondylosis? It's about whether the person is actually good or not. And it's about their approach. You will see, maybe chiro is a little bit more likely to be focused on hands-on treatment than the physio. But at the end of the day, it's what principles are they working towards? How are they trying to help you? You could go to a chiro and you could go to a physio and have IDD, spinal decompression work done, right? It's the same thing. Same thing. It's what are you having done with them? What are they telling you to do? And that is more important within the profession rather than between professions. People will find benefit seeing a good chiro, seeing a good physio, seeing a good osteo, etc. Just going over to YouTube, some of the comments. Guys, keep them coming in TikTok. I'll come back over there in a second. Mike, can you explain how to structure a workout in phase 3? I'm used to doing upper and lower 2 times a week. How often do you do the core workout each week? Generally speaking, when we're going into the phase 2 and 3 process, phase 3, we start getting to the point where we were going to have rest days. And guys, those of you that are new to the program, make sure you cover the strategy material because it lays it out step by step on how frequently we should be doing these things. We talk about in the educational material, the utilization of rest days, particularly as we get into the phase 3 level. You're going to be working out daily, maybe with 2 or 3, well, probably 2 rest days, but that is variable from one individual to another. It's about finding the right intensity, and then gradually, this is not, there's not a hard and fast rule. You will need some rest days is probably the hard and fast rule there, but it's going to vary as you progress. So someone like Paul might go into phase 3 and he's not really working out that hard. It's more a case of technique, but he's starting to get to that level where he's actually challenging himself. And so he might go, do you know what? I'm going to have a couple of rest days here. I can also leverage lower intensity days, right? Where so maybe he's built his load up to like 20 kilos on the squat, for example, and he's going to do a hard day on 20 kilos on the squat. Then he's going to do a technique day where he's only using 5 to 10 kilos just to help with active recovery. And then he might have a rest day. That varies and meshes and evolves as you go through the phase 3 stroke phase 4 process. But generally speaking, you'll probably look at doing, and I would strongly suggest in Paul's case and for most members that you focus more on the squat and the hip hinge workout and leave out the split squat workout just for the moment. You'll come back to that a little bit later on. Paul's also said I've got a garage gym, which is gathering dust. At what point will the program does upper body workout come in? That comes in the 4th phase. Again, we cover the additional workouts, and there's guidance and workouts that you will be able to incorporate and when to do that in the strategy material for phase 4. Let's bank the lower back stuff first before we worry about the upper body. We will get there, and you'll be back to it in no time. The problem with the injury is that I can't see that it's healing. You can't see it. You can't see it. And unfortunately, while we're still using very light weights, we have this paradigm, which is so difficult. I was only speaking to one of the guys in the group earlier, and this will be true for people like Paul and others. And she was saying, oh, I finish my exercises and I get the pain comes back afterwards. The sciatica comes back afterwards, right? And I said, okay. And we said, was the sciatica there before? And she goes, yeah, it's there before the workout and it's there after the workout. I said, but it's not there during the workout. I said, yeah, it's not there during the workout. It goes during the workout. No pain during the workout. So the only time in the day where you're experiencing aggravation-free is during the workout. Why is that? Because that's the only time of the day where you're actually 100% focused on what you are doing and stabilizing and supporting the spine. It's like, oh, and the penny dropped and it was like, yeah, wow, okay, that makes a lot of sense. When you're only able to do a 10 kilo squat, a 5 kilo squat, an 8 kilo squat, it's perfectly reasonable for you to still be in a situation of pain. Your progress through that process is what gets you better. It doesn't happen overnight, because this didn't happen overnight. You have to get there. But as you start to get to the point where you are doing 20, 30, 50, 60 kilos, everybody gets to a different point through that process where they start to go, I'm better and better and better. And that's why there's all this educational material as well, because there'll be lots of things you're doing every day that are putting strain on the lower back. If we're using 5 to 10 kilos on our workout, which is supposed to be the hardest thing we do every day, and we're sitting down, we're putting more load through our spine after we finish the workout than we did during the workout. That's a necessary step for you to go through. Unfortunately, there's no way around that. We can't just dunk you in and go, right, you're going to start workouts at a higher level. You have to start where you start and go through the trouble. But if you do that, you will make progress. What else have we got here? And yes, it is very real that you can't see the healing process, which is why you have your workouts. You know that I tried 5 kilos on the squat last week and I had no trouble, right? And then I tried 10 kilos and it was a little bit too heavy for me. I could feel as I was getting to the same point, it's a little bit too much. I'm getting a bit of tension developing in an inappropriate manner in my lower back, right? I'm feeling a little bit of aggravation. Oh yeah, it's a bit too much. I'm getting a bit of that sciatica. Okay, that's too much. 7.5 is where you're gonna be. But when you sit down as a 94 kilo male, I immediately put 20 kilos through my spine. Maybe I put 45 kilos through that same section that's injured as I sit like this. And so that realization is important. It doesn't take the pain away. I appreciate that. But it's important to understand this. Paul said, I'm on various medications that take the edge off the sciatic pain. Could this be a hindrance? No, you don't need to unnecessarily force yourself. But what I do think is a very unwise move is when we say, oh, well, I'm going to go and do this bad thing, right? Whatever it could be. I'm going to go and, stack boxes in the garage, right? I'll just take some painkillers so I can get over it and get through it. That's an unwise move. But making your life a little bit more pleasant, a little bit more manageable, if the pharmaceuticals are helping you, if it takes the edge off, then fair enough, use that. Try and use it sparingly. Realize that as you come off those, you often find that you get a little bit of a recoil and pain. Think of this like if you're wearing sunglasses and you're outside and it's nice and sunny, your eyes adjust. And then when you take the sunglasses off, you kind of go, oh gosh, that's really bright. And then they adjust. That kind of process with what happens is as Paul makes progress and you guys make progress and you're on pain medication, your pain levels come from here and then they come down, 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 and down. Then you cut the medication because you've made progress on the rehab. And then your pain levels go up a little bit and then they go down, 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 and down. And then they carry on going down. And then you cut the medication a bit more and then they go up a little bit as like a recoil and then they go down, 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 down. And you want to discuss, if it's prescription medication that we're talking about, you want to discuss coming off those in a strategic manner, being aware of any withdrawals with your prescribing physician, your GP, whoever that is, just to make sure there are no issues. I would not be taking pain medication, just crack on. That's not a smart move, but strategic use, especially for things like sleep, can make sense, right? You're not making your back worse while you're sleeping unless you're doing some peculiar things. So bear that in mind. Someone said here, have you heard of contralateral nerve gliding? My physio gave me an exercise. Yeah, call it sciatic flossing if you want. That kind of stuff, I imagine that's what we're talking about here. I'd leave that out. I would just leave that out. I really would. you're not doing anything. We have a video, send us a DM. We've got a video on sciatic flossing, which will cover that kind of concept and help you understand it a little bit better and why it's not a good idea. Fundamentally, a lot of the positions that you're getting into when you're trying to do that nerve flossing are going to be contraindicated fundamentally. You're just flexing the lumbar spine over and over again, and that's not helpful. Joe has said, what do you actually recommend? We recommend 3 things. Number 1, you need to have education, understand the spine. It is very, very important. You need to have, additionally, relief-based practices. These are things like the towel decompression, lower body stretching. You can use massage guns, contrast bathing, those things that help manage the inflammation that's building up around here in the lower back, and also give you opportunities like through the towel decompression and bed decompression to unload the strained segments of the spine regularly through the day. You then also have your rehabilitation. These are spine stability exercises, the dead bug, marching bridge, squat, hip hinge, step up, and single leg hip hinge. We'd use those in the program to allow you to build and rehabilitate the area, create more protection for the area, and then build the actual strength of the tissues that have been injured. That's what we do in the rehab. And Clara has said, I appreciate content currently in physiotherapy, but interested in the program. How do you start? Check out the link in the profile page. We actually currently have, as part of the Black Friday deal, we have a 7-day free trial for the membership. So I would check that out. Now is the time to do that. Just send us a DM and we'll send you a link if you're over on TikTok. If you're on YouTube, just post a comment and we can get a link for you guys and paste that into the chat for you so you can check it out. Just going back through some of the comments over here. What else have we got? I am still very achy. I'm struggling to recover since July. Stiffness in my lower back, tension in my calf, etc., etc. My disc bulges, my discs are not healing. It means my discs are not healing. No. Your discs are healing every day. You're just getting in the way of the process. You're tripping yourself up. The most important thing, Madeline, I forget if you're in the program or not, or if you've been relatively recently in the program. And guys, if you're posting a comment, do always say like if you're in the program, certainly, like let us know what you're up to on a squat or hip hinge. Really important, because it helps make the answer more helpful, right? Your body is healing every single day. This is why we have such an educational component of the program. Like when you start the program, phase 1, and I ask yourself the question, guys, those of you in the comments that are in the program, right? How many of the 40 educational units in phase 1 alone have you covered? I can go and check, by the way, right? How many have you covered? And how have you performed on the evaluation metric at the end, the checkpoint, right? Those things make a big difference alongside the rehabilitation work. But guys, in this case, we've got since July, Madeline's been struggling, right? That's what, maybe 6 months now? What about the guys that have been struggling 6 years and longer than that? Like if you've been doing the wrong stuff over and over again for 6 months, 6 years, 6 days, 6 weeks, a decade, longer, well, yeah, you're going to continue to interfere with the recovery process. The great news is when you start doing the right things sincerely, you're going to find that things can turn around. It takes a little bit longer for some than others, but it turns around. Christian has said, Mike, do you shut down over Christmas for a time? Generally speaking, like one of the really important, well, we've always done it this way. With the members area, we are always there, like 24/7, 365. Like even on Christmas Day, we'll do a few comments here and there, almost certainly, right? Like we're always there for the members to help them through the process. That's why we have the program with the support. So, I mean, do we shut down? Kind of. We do a little bit less. We generally find that we do a few less live streams in December, typically speaking. We might do a live stream between Christmas and New Year, that kind of stuff. But we're always there for our members, right? It's fun. It's nice. We've got a great community in there. It's really, really cool. Some people are struggling. They're new. Some people are going on to new challenges. You know, some people are coming out the other end. Like, it's fun. It's nice. It's an enjoyable. We're very lucky to have that community that we've built up over the years. Sam has said, thoughts on sauna use at any point in the rehabilitation stage? I do think it's helpful, but you've got to bear in mind a couple of things. Number one, we talk a lot about using contrast bathing, using icing. If you're in the sauna, if you're early on in the recovery process or midway through the recovery process, I would strongly suggest after the sauna, get some ice on your lower back, just to make sure we're avoiding any excess congestion in this area down here. That's the first thing. Second thing, when you are in the sauna, sitting there like this is not a good idea. I would suggest, if possible, lying down would be the best, but how you get up matters. So get up carefully when you finish. Roll onto your side, swing yourself up, get up slowly. That way you can leverage it. Sam has said with an L5S1 general, where is the general pain code? When you have the spondylolistheses are the greatest examples because it's the segment, the soft tissues from the disc that's weight bearing in a peculiar manner to the ligaments that run between the two bones. The nerves are not like the issue. The nerves communicate pain. So by definition, every single one of you guys with back pain has nerve pain because nerve is the process by which you feel pain, right? And sure, there are certain scenarios where the disc is literally like this, pinning up against the wall, and you can see it on the MRI, but for the vast majority, that is not the case. There's a lot of inflammation in there that's irritating the area. It is a segmental issue. You have a segmental issue. And if you have segmental instability, need a little bit more support, Sam, I would check out the program. I would get involved. Use the support there. Use the structure. Use the structure. The pain will change every day as long as you remain weak and vulnerable because you're doing lots of different things every single day. So you're going to get this thing. You feel like I don't really know what it is. Part of it can be cumulative strain through the day. You're just doing a lot of little things that if you just did those and nothing else, you'd kind of be okay. But you're constantly wiggling this down here and you don't have the strength and stability, so it constantly gets aggravated and irritated. Madeline said, I don't get it. I know so many people who have similar issues and they've recovered 6 to 8 weeks. I struggle forever because you're not doing things correctly, Madeline. Because you're not doing things correctly. Unfortunately, there are many, many reasons why others struggle. I always remember, and it's such a frustrating thing, do your stuff correctly 100%. Focus on doing the right things. You're probably doing the wrong things. I always remember having conversations, and I've had more than one of these, with people that come in and go, oh, I'm overweight, I know I need to lose weight, but I've got a friend, and he's got no back pain, and he weighs twice as much as me. That's not an excuse. You don't look at exceptions for the rule just because that guy hasn't happened to injure himself just yet. Use the evaluation tools. Go and try and do a squat with 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 kilos. Just do it as a thought experiment. If you can't do that, if you can't do 5 or 10 without aggravating your back, you don't have appropriate levels of function as a human being. As a human being. Madeline said, you started the phase 1 state. Fantastic. That's awesome. That's the first step to start doing the right things. And I hope as you go through the educational material, you'll start to see things that you've been doing wrong over the years. You'll start to realize, do you know what? Like I say so many times to you guys on the chat and on these lives, if you can't even lie on your back and wiggle your leg in a dead bug without flaring up and losing control of your spine, is it any wonder you've been struggling? Is it any wonder? Right? It's a great test. You're going to go through the process, Madeline, and others that have started the program, of appreciating your starting point. Do not try and cheat. Do not try and cheat. Be honest, aggravation free, correct choreography. This is the guiding principle when you are doing your rehabilitation to recover from lower back pain. You must focus on those principles and then realize, as is so often the case, that you're really struggling to actually control yourself effectively. Judith said, maybe my positive comment did not come through. No, I did not see this. Judith, thank you for sharing. You are wonderful. You are too, thank you. With your explanations and the basics, the squat, hip hinge, the step up, it helped me continue to heal since March 2025 when I was off work. Adding physical therapist, lady reset my uneven left leg hips so I can sit, rest, and the hips with over-hurried at work movements. Sounds like you're doing well, Judith. Thank you for sharing. It takes time. It takes hard work. Notice we're not talking about fixing your sciatica in 35 seconds with this funny, quirky stretch. We're talking about rebuilding resilience in your spine over a slow, long period of time. Why? Because we're not looking for gimmicks here. We're looking to actually rebuild resilience and create something that's strong, stable. Paul has said, just brilliant explanation of everything. Thank you, Paul. I don't get to do the brilliant explanations if you guys don't ask the questions though. So you're part of it, right? I'm really starting to understand the program and exactly what's trying to achieve and how the rehab strengthening works, and I'm confident that I'm going to get through this. Yes, it's a season. Guys, I talk about it like a season, right? It's not the same, but to give you guys an appreciation, it's not an injury, right? And just bear this in mind, right? When we had Celestia, our second daughter, January last year, just before then, I'll just use this as an example because it was something I was working on. My bench press was 8-ish reps maybe 8, maybe 9. There's certainly more than there's right now. 8 or 9 reps of 120. 120 kilos on the bench press, flat bench. In the 6 months after her being born, it went down a lot. And it's getting back up there. I've been derailed a little bit with this illness the last few weeks. I tested out a couple of reps yesterday. It was okay. Certainly not 8 or 9. Rebuilding strength takes time. And that's not with an injury. And sure, that's way more strength than one would need. You could make the case. I do jiu-jitsu, so I'm trying to make it appropriate to that scenario. But it takes time. And I'm not trying to go from 0. I'm trying to rebuild what I lost over 6 months. You guys have a little bit more challenge than that. It takes time to rebuild. You are talking about your body regenerating. Just appreciate for a moment how miraculous the fact that we can even do that is. How good all of you are. And your body will be working. It's just most of the time with back injuries, the reason, like to the comment earlier, is 4 months for you. It's 40 months for someone else. It's longer than that for others, is because you haven't had the education to go alongside this and you're tripping yourself up every single day. Nirav Limitless has said, one of the things that is confusing me, that if a neutral spine most of the day, but I'm progressing in the workouts, then I'm losing progress on the workout, maybe moving oddly once or twice in the day. Then am I then losing progress on the workout? No, I don't quite understand that question there, to be completely honest. See if you can rewrite it for me. What else have we got here? Paula said 8 kilo squat, but I think I can go heavier. Make sure you don't try and test the heavier, Paul, until you've done phase 3. Strategy, because we want to do it. We want to set ourselves up for success. Please, 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 please. Just looking through some of the other comments everyone takes up, what else we've got here, and then I'm going to come back to YouTube, guys. So keep the comments coming in. I will get through all of them on YouTube. What exercises are good to bring back mobility when I have an L5-S1 issue? Focus on spine stability. You focus on spine stability. What mobility are we worried about? We're often worried about the hips. We might be worried about the lower back, but I would suggest don't worry about that for the time being. Focus on building stability back into the lumbar spine, and then from there, you are going to want to build a good level of resilience. Now, we talk about targets here. Think of 3 milestones for all of you guys looking to recover from lower back pain. See where you stack up in these. One of them is going to be a little bit more of a long-term goal. The other is a kind of medium to long-term, and the other one is a more short to medium term. None of these are short-term, as in next week, right? When you sit down, you put 20% of your body weight through your spine, extra. When you sit down poorly, you might put up to 45% more of your body weight through your spine. So what are those figures? For me, they're going to be typically around about 50 kilos and 20 kilos, roughly. So the first thing is to be able to expose your spine to the load that you expose it to when you're sitting in your workouts safely. And a lot of you guys are far off that. As great as progress is, you are still far off that. And that's a very good humbling point to consider, so that you know you've still got a place to go. Right? You've still got a way to go. And then long term, we're aiming for ladies, 75%, for men, 100% of your body weight. Now, if you're in your 70s and 80s, then you could take a little bit off that, but still not a massive amount. You should still be aiming for that. Aiming being the key word. Aiming for those kind of levels. Some of you guys will take years to get there. Some of you guys will take months. Most of you guys will take months to years to get to that upper end. Some of you guys won't ever make it, but you certainly need to be past the first 2. And that, again, can take a bit of time. Someone said, how can I reduce my testosterone level? I would have a chat with your GP about that, as to whether that's necessary as well. Squatting on wedges, a great question. Should I be squatting on wedges? No. No, you should not. Some of you guys in the chat will know I've been talking to you about that lately. Why are we squatting? Can I squat better if I elevate my heels? Can I get a bit of extra depth? Yes. And can I keep my spine more neutral? Yes. Are you wearing high heels every day? No. When I first started seriously getting into training, I had significant limitation in my ankle dorsiflexion, meaning that squatting was difficult. I still don't have the best dorsiflexion. It could be better, but I worked on it. And so for a good period of a good couple of months, I'd probably say about 6 months, maybe even longer, I was squatting with some 20 plates, 45 for those of you in the US, underneath my heels. Why is that relevant? I was trying to improve my squat to improve my conditioning and my squat, right? And I worked towards being flat. That's not you guys. You guys are not squatting to squat. You're squatting to leverage that movement as a back healthy movement and to build resilience. In the early days, it's most important that you squat as you squat in the real world, which is, I would suggest, barefoot is the most appropriate option here. You're not wearing heels all the time in your daily life, so you need to make the movement applicable to daily life. Why do we pick those 3 and 4 exercises? The squat, the hip hinge, and the step up in particular, and the addition of the hip hinge, the single leg hip hinge. Why are we picking those? This is so important. This is why education matters. You're not just squatting to squat. Sure, many of you guys could squat better with your back pain if you just went up on your toes. That is in fact a strategy that we talk about with regards to getting out of a chair, right? We have scenarios in the clinic where someone comes in, they go, I can't get out of a chair, it causes me terrible pain. Oh gosh, it hurts so much, look at that, ouch. Well, no wonder you're rounding your back all over the place. How do we fix this in 30 seconds or less? What we do is we hold ourselves correct, get our toes underneath us, go up on the toes and go straight up. Oh, I didn't get back pain. It's a hack. It's a hack. You need to, however, learn how to go down correctly. Otherwise, you're going to create trouble. So the purpose of the squat, the hip hinge, and the step up is the reality, as I've said many times on today's live, that you are doing these movements every single day outside of the rehab, in spite of how bad your sciatica, your back pain, whatever it is might be. So you need to learn how to do them. And you don't have high heels on all the time. So using wedges, slant boards, and other stuff you've seen online is a waste of time because you're robbing yourself of the applicability of your daily life or of your exercise to daily life. And that is what gets most people, those of you that have had back pain or sciatica for a long period of time, that come to the program and you notice significant improvements in your daily pain in a relatively short period of time, your ability to do things in a relatively short period of time. Most of that is you just becoming more technically proficient and you successfully applying that to your daily life. That's why education is important, because you need to know to do that. We do not do hacks to make it easier for us in that sort of scenario. That's not an appropriate hack to do. Not appropriate. Going through some of the other comments on YouTube. So Jackson says, I've been doing different rehab exercises through the past 8 months. I'm still having flare-ups where I can't bend to the right and sometimes flare-ups in the last half of the day or multiple. I don't know what rehab you've been doing. If you've been doing the rehabilitation work that we talk about in the program, then what level of hip hinge are we up to, Jackson? If you've been doing things like knee hugs, child's pose, etc., then that's difficult. I don't know what you've been doing. And the acid test is if you've been doing rehab for the past 8 months, what are you up to in your squat and hip hinge? That is the most important question. What are we up to in our squat and hip hinge? If you've been doing rehab that didn't include those exercises, how on earth do you know how healed you are? One of the reasons that we want to do the squat and hip hinge is because we know, I had one of the members posted in the group earlier today. He said, I was doing 70 kilos. If you told me I could do that before my back injury, or rather before I joined the program, I wouldn't have believed you. 70 kilos, that's not where we need to be, but it's a hell of a lot better than 0. And now that individual has an understanding of just how healed they are. They're healed enough to deal with X load. And that's the way in which you need to think about these things. I'm healed enough to deal with X load. It's the best we've got. It's not perfect, but it's the best comparison we can have. And your rehab should include some ability to draw that. That's why doing knee hugs, child's pose, some funny little clamshell exercises on the floor, and other peculiar exercises that have no load or comparison into them, they're useless because they don't give us an answer to that question of how resilient we might or might not be. Roy has said, Mike, I don't feel my core muscles firing when doing the dead bug or the marching bridge. I feel soreness but no activation. Work harder. I know it's a tongue-in-cheek example. A lot of you guys will struggle to find the engagement with the core. Testing out things like the candle drill that we talk about in the core activation segment in the phase 1 tutorials, where we really all the way out. Make use of those accessory muscles of respiration. The biggest mistake people make when they're doing the dead bug is they are not engaging correctly. If I demonstrate for a moment, when you do a dead bug, we'll do it here. Move this chair out of the way. You can do a dead bug, and I am not doing anything useful. I'm just moving my legs here. It's a great hip exercise, right? This is rubbish. If I, for a moment, engage, squeeze, and now start going about, even at the same sort of pace, it's way different. I can feel the engagement happening. It tires it out. Even, to be honest, just going and doing a belly pop that I discussed a couple of weeks ago. Out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in. I'm not using my hand, I'm just showing you where my t-shirt's moving, right? Squeeze! You start to feel those muscles get fired up. Classic mistake, not engaging enough. Understanding that as the leg goes out, the forces that are trying to destabilize your spine are increasing, so you need to tighten harder. That's the mistake that people make. Not strain, but tighten harder. Aidan has said, he's got 8 mil herniation at L5S1. Oh, that's cool. Okay, that's cool, Aidan. So Aidan has said, L5S1 herniation. Sometimes I read the comment, I'm just reading it and just reading it out to you guys on the fly. Aidan has said, L5S1 herniation, 8 mil, numb everything. This lad's program got me better. I'm playing football now every week at 43. Awesome. Thank you, Aidan. Thank you for sharing. That is cool. That is really cool. You've done the hard work though. Christian said, I assume if the disc is pinning the nerves as you describe, that it would mean yes, yes. Constant pain, even when lying. When the nerve is actually, this is why I say it's actually quite infrequent that it's happening, right? This scenario. If you're getting that, imagine having a perpetual funny bone. Like you bang your funny bone here, that's because there was a momentary bang and then it came off. Now imagine if you're constantly pressing that. You would have unabating symptoms. They would always be there and they would be significant, especially if we're talking about this kind of pressure. But a lot of times it's just contacting, right? Let me show you guys. Your nerve is running through a little tube. Now there might be some stenosis because there's a disc bulge in there. This is harder to do from this angle, right? But it's going through the tube. If something is just touching it and pushing it to the side, newsflash, nerves run next to stuff. All of your nerves, and yes, the piriformis too, they're running next to muscles that are moving and bending and contacting the nerves. It's not a big deal if it's contacted. Now, if it's tensioned and then contacted, like so, you can see there's a lot more compression of here. But if you imagine this nerve is not being held taut, this is why when you do like a nerve flossing test, if you pull really hard, you get pain. Okay? If the nerve is nice and soft, if I pull it a little bit, okay, or if I hold it here, if I press it to the side, you see how it doesn't deform that much at the point where I press in. If instead I hold it taut, somehow, there we go. If I hold it taut and now try and press it to the side, there's more compression and deformation of the band as I press it to the side. If it's nice and loose, it'll just move to the side. Because these things, the body is designed. Nerves do not run in some kind of like weird, peculiar vacuum floating in cyberspace. Yes, in the spinal column, right? They're running in the bed of cerebrospinal fluid, etc. But these guys can be moved out the way. They can move, they can touch other stuff. If it's being contacted and hammered in against the wall, compressed against something, then you're going to have very different symptoms, very different symptoms. What else have we got here? Can we do glute strengthening exercises during a herniated disc or bulging disc recovery? Nyla, what do you think a squat is? What do you think a hip hinge is? Right? Some people think that you get told, oh, you're going to do glute strengthening, and so you lie on the floor doing this. This is apparently glute strengthening. Right? That's not glute strengthening. Guys, I can pick up a 5 kilo dumbbell and just do curls for the next 5 minutes and get a nice pump. I'm not getting stronger. And one of the things that I think beginners really need to understand, especially if you haven't trained in the past, this conflation between I feel a burn in the muscle and I've actually strengthened it by challenging it. Yes, you can get a pump. That's not going to be, a pump is not going to be the same as building strength. And so a lot of those exercises are like, oh, do you feel the burn? Yeah, I feel the burn. No, that's not what we're looking for. Yeah, sure, we can do some exhaustion work after we've done the strength building, but you're going to build your glutes with a proper squat or a proper split squat or a proper step up or a proper hip hinge. You're going to get the glutes involved. I'll be talking about the glutes in a second with reference to hip thrusters and that kind of stuff. So keep an eye out for that. What else have we got in here? What is your opinion on Stuart McGill Big 3? Would you recommend exercises? Yes, I think they are. Otherwise, I would recommend the Stuart McGill Big 3. I don't think the curl down is very good compared to the dead bug. I also think that the idea that you put your arm behind your back, look at my arm, it's a triangle, right? Why they haven't thought, and I do think that there's a lot of crossover, by the way, just full disclaimer. I think if we take like McGill and Mackenzie are the two big ones for back pain that you'll hear a lot of people talk about, right? Mackenzie's rubbish. It's just bending and twisting the spine in various degrees. We talk about that all the time. That's not what you need. McGill aligns a lot more closely with what we talk about, but why are you telling people to put their back on? Everyone's like, oh, my back's twisted, this, that, the other, right? That's not straight. So why are you telling people on a curl down to put their hand behind their back? Firstly, if they've got shoulder problems, that's a problem. Why not just use a towel like we talk about, right? A towel can be level. So you can put that under your back when you're doing something like a dead bug or marching bridge to support the lordosis. That's one of the things we talk about. So there's little errors, little issues. I think the side plank, although we used to include it in the program, we used to include a pulse in the side plank. I don't like any holds because holds are not reliably scalable. When should you have stopped your side plank hold? When should you have stopped your back extension hold? Should you have stopped it at 1 minute, 2 minutes, 30 seconds? Were you just bored? I know I was when I tried doing a plank. I just got bored. So the likelihood of you actually getting to the right level on those and having consistency amongst your technique, I think is just a bit more difficult than doing something like a squat, a hip hinge, a step up, a single leg hip hinge with load. I think, personally, you might disagree and you're perfectly at liberty to do so, but my understanding, my thought process, my way of training is that holds suck because you're not able, when technique is important, which it is, because we don't want our spine starting to bow, my shoulder starting to get tired. We want to know we've got good form the whole way through. And so I think that the holds for extended periods, they're just not very easy to reliably scale. And the most important thing about our rehab is we're looking for aggravation free. Now, was it that you went for too long because your disc couldn't deal with the loading? Or was it that you went for long and you kind of started to bend? You don't really know. And you did 30 seconds last time, you did 45 this time. Did you only do 30 seconds last time because you got bored? And was 45 seconds where you should have gone to, or should you have gone a bit longer? You just thought, oh, I may as well stop now. How much technique did you, all these kind of variables, you get the idea of why I don't think holds are particularly good. Also, none of those exercises are applicable to daily life, unless you're leaning on the counter, right? The squat, the hip hinge, the reason we're choosing those is because they are so applicable to daily life. It's so important that you give patients the tools to have a leaking of the benefit of your rehab, so that you're not just squatting to squat, you're not just rehabbing to be good at those exercises, but they have some additional benefits outside in the real world. Jackson said, could the physio and poor life habits explain why I haven't improved? Certainly. I will say, Jackson, of the thousands and thousands and thousands of patients clinically and members of the program, a vast majority, if not all, because we basically never see anyone that comes to us first, unfortunately. More or less everybody has been doing something with someone qualified before they've seen us. Usually physio, rehab, osteopath, chiropractor. They've seen the GP, they've had medications. Many of them have had injections or surgery. Many of them have had MRIs. Many of them have had specialist consultations. So there's a very good chance that that's why you haven't got better. You haven't been given the appropriate guidance. And to be honest, a lot of the physio rehabilitation work that you get given is like, here's a sheet of exercises. It's not rehab. As some of you guys that are in the program will know, that is rehab. The program is rehab. There's strategy, there's tutorials. You will have done spent a significant amount of time working through videos before you even start the exercise. So many times you go to your physio, your osteo, your chiro, and the exercises are like, hey guys, there's a little bowl in the corner on your way out. Just pick your hand in there and pick out a couple of exercises and do those at home for me. That's the emphasis that's been placed upon rehabilitation. And don't get me wrong, back when we had the clinic in London pre-COVID, like, we didn't have time to focus on rehab. And it's only been the experiences of subsequent years that has allowed us to understand and appreciate just how powerful these things can be, to the point where we don't let patients come in and see us if they're not on the program. You do the program first, and then you can come in for an appointment. Then you can come and go on the decompression table. Then you can come and go on the laser. But you're not coming in unless you started the rehab. It makes a massive difference. Education makes a massive difference. Oscar said, can you recommend a rear delt exercise? I'd probably just go with kind of the standard high cable. Oh, remind me later. Not that heavy. Bring that down a little bit. Let's go 5. Probably just go with the standard opening out like so. I generally try, when you're doing these exercises, probably actually just hold on to the cable actually, rather than the handle, and then coming out and back. But I generally try and use cables over dumbbells, Oscar. So for reference, Oscar, you're at 75 kilos on the squat for 10 reps. So we've got a good degree of resilience, but I'd still just stick to using the cable. It's just easier, lower risk, lower challenge, just as effective. But equally, you know, I'd spend a good bit of time focusing on just the compounds. You know, I discussed in one of the live workouts in the additional workout library for those of you guys in phase 4, we've got like the kneeling row coming down and in. This is obviously way too light, but coming down and in. And you've got those options. That's going to hit the rear delt, it's going to hit the lat, it's going to hit the traps, it's going to hit the biceps. I'm all for these days. A lot of people don't have the spare time to be doing all this extra stuff. And so I'm all for just stick to the compounds for most of you guys. That's going to be more than sufficient. Certainly to make a lot of progress. Just coming over to TikTok here, guys, and then I'll be back over to YouTube. Recently read a lot of general leg immobility and lower back pain in aging. Is glute needed exercise? I'm not sure. I can't quite understand that comment there on TikTok. Someone said, I'm from South Africa, I've been given an injection, it didn't help. What were you expecting from the injection? I don't mean that to be tongue-in-cheek, like what were we expecting to happen? Right? The injection is doing precisely nothing for this. Nothing for this injury. You walk out of the injection, you know, no better than you were when you went in. Now, symptoms might change, and we don't know the details here, because often when you hear that conversation, you're like, I had an injection, it didn't help. And then you probe a little bit further, and it's like, well, I did feel better for a few days to a few weeks, maybe a month or so, but then it came back, right? That is reasonably common, reasonably normal. Of course it's going to happen if you haven't been given rehabilitation or anything like that. LM has said, bedbound with sciatica, how quickly can you get back on the feet? This is the question that everybody wants to know, but I can't answer, and you can't answer. And people think that going back through the case history can answer that question. It can't. That's why the rehabilitation is so important, because you only really have an idea of how good the person's going to be based on their ability to do the rehab. Now, some people will struggle a lot to get into phase 1. They can't do any variations of the exercises apart from the most basic. They're stuck just lying on the bed doing a core engagement instead of a full dead bug. Their squat looks something like this, right? Their hip hinges like that, and that's where they're starting, right? That person's going to take a little bit longer than the person that can establish that learning quickly. The appetite, excuse me, the appetite for doing work. Are you going to cover the 9 units in the strategy section for phase 1 today and go through the tutorials and go through the educational material and spend a good degree of time working on this? Or are you going to go through it slowly over the course of the next 2 weeks? That's up to you, right? That's up to you. Are you going to leverage the support? Are you going to record yourself doing videos? Are you going to complete the check-ins? Or are you not? That's the variable. We don't know that until you start doing it. I go through little phases of looking and checking people's adherence to the program. How much of the material are they doing? The biggest, most common mistake I see is people just skip straight to the exercises. They haven't completed the strategy. Well, in that scenario, you're probably going to take longer than someone else because you're missing critical information, even though you've paid for it. Guys, very important. We have to actually follow the program. So that's the biggest variable, the thing that we need to consider. You can get better very quickly. But remember, just like my eye, it'll feel better, and then your motivation to do the exercises will wane. You'll stop doing them, and then you'll realize that it's not actually better, and you'll re-injure yourself because we haven't built rehab. We haven't built resilience back into our spine through our rehab. Very common. Haley has said, why do so many doctors dismiss sciatica? Because they can't help you. It's practically like going to your surgeon or go to the plumber and say, hey man, my Wi-Fi router is not working. That's basically what's happening. That's why they dismiss, because they don't have a process for helping fundamentally, I'm afraid. It's not their expertise. A GP anyway in the UK is a playmaker. They are a playmaker. They are there to direct you to the right person. They're not qualified to help you, I would argue. What do they say? When I was in busy clinical practice, because it's a bit different these days. We spend so much time helping the members and all that kind of stuff, and we see patients here and there. a lot less frequently than back when we had the clinic in London or in clinical practice in my early days. Every single patient at certain points seeing over 250 people in a week. Every single one of those was maybe 95%, 90% lower back and some neck. What does your GP see, especially this time of year? Babies, older people. Most of it is illness, colds, etc. They're seeing a couple of back people, as common as back pain is, they're seeing everything else. They are not specialists in lower backs. They are not. So it's unfair to expect them to be specialists in lower backs. And the tools that they are given to help you, which are other professionals being able to play make, they're putting you into a pipeline that's backed up to kingdom come. So that's why they can't help you. That's why they're like, sorry, I can't help. It would be better if they said, I'm sorry, go private. That would be better. But that's what it looks like anyway. Everyone will have their own opinions on that, and I appreciate that. You comment in the comment section, right? But that's the reality. We had the case of Annie, a member who's been with us for a while. She was a GP herself. Her story, I can't show you guys on here. I've shown you guys on TikTok before. It's on the website. Just go into the media section, or if you want to send us a DM, you can send us a DM. Annie was a GP who was doing the stuff that she had to prescribe people for her sciatica, and it wasn't working because she's got a bit more knowledge than the average person. The education makes a lot of sense to her very quickly. Starts to realize the problems in what she was recommending. She was at the point where she knew when patients came in to see her that what she had to prescribe them sucked, and she was paying privately to do this other thing that she could not recommend the patient because of the constraints of the system with which she operated in. That's the reality. What do we do about that? I don't know. What else have we got in comments here? Going over to YouTube again. I'll come back to TikTok in a minute. And guys, by the way, I know I mentioned it earlier, but it's been a little while. We're getting towards the end of the hour. I will go a little bit longer if there's still some more questions, guys, to help you guys. But those of you guys, if you need more help, we do have the Black Friday sale on. It's on the TikTok story. There's a link there. Those of you guys that get the Sunday email, we sent an email out yesterday. There will be one going out a little bit later this weekend, just to remind you guys. If you are a member, we've also sent an email out that was pinned in the notification as well of the live session. Take advantage of it. We've made a lot of big changes over this last year, which were released in September. We've got a lot more cool stuff coming in the pipeline, workout logging and other bits and pieces, which is really cool for those of you later on in the program. Don't worry about that. If you're in the early phases, you'll get there. But do check it out. If you need more help, now is the time to do it. We only run the Black Friday, well, we only run a sale once a year. It is the only sale we do all year. So now's the time to get involved. I'll leave it at that. Going back to the comments, guys. The physio, oh, here we go. The physio, so this is a great question. Jackson, join us hopefully next week when we will have something, a special guest, or piece of equipment anyway. Physio I've been doing has not included squats, but I've been doing back extensions in the Roman chair, 2-minute holds, 1-minute holds, single legs, and reps for 30. Yes, 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 yes. That is the lower back ability program, I imagine. I don't think, I will be able to explain this to you really well next week. For Black Friday, I saw there was a sale on the Freak Athlete Nordic and back extension machine. And I know I talk about this all the time, but I want to be able to show you guys. So I've gone to the trouble of, or we have, of purchasing a back extension machine so I can demonstrate to you once and for all. The Roman chair is a waste of money. I've wasted £650, so you don't have to. Now, that machine actually, I think it's got some cool other features as well for those training. I think the Nordics is really, really interesting. But the back extension machine, like if you want to do that and you've got a healthy back, go ahead, crack on, right? I think it's a waste of time. Let me explain why. It's cost me £650. You didn't have to get the most expensive one, but anything cheaper, they're very cumbersome and they don't fit away very well, or it's really rickety, and do you really want to be in that kind of thing? So you're going to have to spend some money, right? Firstly, it costs you money. Do you know what doesn't cost money? Doing a hip hinge. It's exactly the same thing. If you want to do a hold, do that, right? That's what you're doing on the Roman chair. That is what you're doing on the Roman chair when you do those holds. It's taking a movement that is true to life, the hip hinge, which you do when you're brushing your teeth, when you're washing your face, when you're putting your trousers on, and it's making it less applicable. On top of that, if you're particularly nervous about doing a hip hinge, You can have a chair in front of you. As you go down, oh, I don't feel good, I've gone too far, I can catch myself and come back up. Try and fail or something go wrong when you're on the Roman chair. Sure, you can get out, but that might not be ideal while you've got raging sciatica because you push yourself too far. Right, you've got to catch yourself on those handles, and then you've got to get yourself out, twisting, bending, all that kind of stuff, and oh, now I'm safe again, and you can collapse in a corner now, right? It's a differentiator that is just there, and it robs you of extra money, it robs you of time, it makes the exercise less applicable. It is a waste of time. I've tried to be more conservative in my criticism of it, but the more I talk about it, the more I re-go over the criticisms of it, the more I feel it is just a waste of time. That is not to take away. If you've managed to use the back extension machine and get better, fantastic, because it is just a hip hinge. I would just argue you're just making it more complicated for yourself and having the courtesy or the pleasure of spending extra money on a machine that is just doing something you could do on your own. You need to devote resources, especially if we've got limited financial resources, devoted to something that's actually going to help you in a more significant manner. Something like an adjustable set of dumbbells, or something like, some other gym kit, right? That's going to help you scale. Just doing it for 2 minutes. You can do this for 2 minutes. And do you know what you can also do? You can do it in front of a chair for 2 minutes if you're feeling particularly nervous. So when you're tired, you can catch yourself on the chair and finish. You can't do that as easily on the Roman chair. I will be demonstrating this to you guys with a Roman chair next week. So stay tuned, right? Is it a cool bit of kit? Sure. But you have to be able to set it up right. You set it up wrong by accident, innocently. You put the pivot here instead of here. Now you've got a back bending exercise. And then the argument is, well, they do some back bends when they do it, right? You can, so when they're like on there and they're like doing flexion to like replicate a Jefferson curl on them, you can also do a bad deadlift, right? You can just do that, right? So what is this piece of machinery doing that you can't do for free in a way that is safer and more applicable to daily life? It's doing nothing for you. Again, you can get better, but I would argue you're getting better in spite of doing that. And I would argue to be going for 8 months, I think it was, 8 months using a Roman chair, and all we're doing is like single leg holds and double leg holds, you're not building any real resilience in the spine. How do you know how much you can lift? What about your toddler that weighs 15 kilos? You have no appreciation for that. Now, there might be some loaded involvement, in particular in Jackson's case. You've got to have load in there. And I know that if you're doing that kind of program, they will include load. But now you're locked into that machine, and now you're going to have to pick up dumbbells and kettlebells and barbells. Like the biggest joke is like when the guy's got the barbell on his back and he's doing it on a hip hinge machine, on a Roman chair. Like, please show me how you got into that position. Please. And please explain to me how that's appropriate for someone with back pain. Please explain to me how that is even useful from a training point of view. Just do a squat. Just do a hip hinge, right? You're just making things quirky so that they stand out. And I appreciate that. Like, that's a social media game, right? But hey, that's what it is. What is the benefit of a single leg hip hinge versus a normal one? You're learning to stabilize one leg versus the other. So when I'm doing a double leg hip hinge, I've just got stability in one domain. When I'm doing a single leg hip hinge, I now have to control my pelvis. I have to control my torso if I've got weight here. So you're just adding an extra variable. The same thing for the step up, right? When I'm doing a step up, I'm having to deal with this left to right tilt. So it's a little bit more dynamic, right? You're working, rather than just working in one plane, you've got multiple planes that you're operating in. So it's kind of a progression. Paul said, stupid question, Mike, but does the hip hinge and squat strengthen the back? I always understood them to be a leg exercise. I don't think it's a stupid question at all. Yes, it strengthens the back. Because what is maintaining? What are you using? It strengthens the midsection and the back muscle, certainly. When you are doing a hip hinge, what do you think is holding you from just going like that? The back. You will find, Paul, as you start to progress on with your rehab and you start doing the hip hinge at a higher level and the squats at a higher level, you will find that your back, you get a bit of a back pump when you're doing the hip hinges. Lower back, because those muscles are on. They're holding contraction. Does the upper body help with strengthening of the spine? So when we start looking in phase 4 at additional workouts, like I mentioned with Oscar's question earlier on, you know, if we want to do some of the pull downs, right? You've also then got, you could do things like chin up, so you're there, and then you're up, and then down. You're working the lats. The lats come and plug in to the pelvis. They span the lumbar spine, blend with the thoracolumbar fascia, plug in a cross-like manner to the glutes on the opposite side. So yes, there is benefit there, but let's get the strong midsection first. We build and we layer the cake. It's no good throwing the Smarties on top of the cake while we haven't built the base or put the icing on or anything like that. So we want to focus on things in the right order. Just looking through some of the other comments here. I'm a mother of 4 children. That is tough if you've got a back issue. And I have to do housework all day. How can I maintain a neutral spine all day? You can't. You can't. You can't. Right? That's one thing that we've been acutely aware of having little ones and appreciating that. That is the worst job, being a parent, especially of young children, because you can't quit that job. You can still get better in spite of that, but the amount of times I've had conversations where the person goes, I keep on flaring my back up, but I don't know why. I didn't do anything. It's like, man, you're a new dad. You have a 6-week-old baby, and you're telling me you did nothing? How many nappies have you changed? How many times have you had sleepless nights? How many times have you put them in the car seat? Oh yeah, I suppose. Yeah, exactly. And you're worried about doing a squat with 5 kilos. Being a mother or a father to young children is tough if you have a herniated disc. You do the best you can. You do the best you can. That is going to be significantly better than what you have been doing. You do the best you can. You leverage relief-based work to deal with the stress and strain of daily life, and you focus on your rehab. Gradually, you will get stronger so that those daily life activities will become less and less strenuous, relatively speaking, and you will be able to make progress. Just looking at some more of the comments here, and I just need to cover some. In fact, I'm going to go over to Maria's comment. This is just about the hip thrusters and the belt squats, and I wanted to talk about this because I think it'll be really helpful for a lot of you guys that are later on in the recovery process. And then we'll go through some more questions, and then we'll call it a day, guys. So Maria's made some good progress, but she started doing what I would classify as, in inverted commas, an epic leg day. And we shared this details in the members group. And I wanted to just pick up some things, right? Those of you that like working out, who want to get back into working out, we've got Paul. He's got his own garage gym, right? Collecting dust, eagerly anticipating getting back in there. Now, I forget where Maria was up to in terms of her squats and hip hinges. I think it was hip hinges that she was doing about 60 kilos. I might be correct. I think it was 60 kilos on the hip hinges for 10 reps. And she started diverting into belt squats and hip thrusters. Some things to talk about here. Number one, the mistake that a lot of you guys make is you have to understand, especially those of you that have worked out in the gym, when you get back into working out, your muscles are going to love it. They are going to get really, really happy. And not only that, up here, you get really happy as well, right? But be very, very careful about jacking up non-load bearing exercises like the hip thruster, like using a belt squat, like the machines that just isolate the lower body, because you'll start strengthening this area and not strengthening this in a commensurate manner. And so what happens is the disparity in strength and resilience between your spine and your midsection and your legs starts to go like this. Through the program, we are building them like that, right? And then you start doing all this extra leg stuff, and now you're like that. Now you've got a very strong area that transitions directly into a relatively weaker area, which means we might get caught out, number one. Number two, going from doing relatively simple workouts to what I would classify as an epic leg day is a big mistake. The volume increase is massive, and the stiffness that will often result in the lower body can mean that the stiffness in these legs starts to translate to irritation of the lower back in a way that's not significant. It's not a big problem, but it is a problem that needs to be managed that will often creep up unaware. Okay, you won't be aware of that, and it'll catch you off guard, and that's why it's that volume change. The next thing is choice of exercises. That's why we have the additional workout library. I would put it to many of you guys that if you just did the back in shape workouts and the additional workouts, you will get in probably the best shape you've ever been in, with slight exceptions. And I would suggest Maria might be one of those exceptions because I've seen the photograph of her competing. So maybe a slight exception there. But from what we know, that 90-ish to 95% of you guys have no significant experience in resistance training. More or less all of you can be significantly better than you currently are, or arguably ever have been, if you just do the workouts that we talk about and layer in the additional workouts going for the long term. You don't need the extras unless you're competing on stage or trying to do some sort of sport-specific stuff, which can be discussed in the members area, which is why we have the support there. And there's the two specific exercises I wanted to cover. Number one was the belt squat. The belt squat is a mechanism for us to put a belt around us so we don't have to hold the bar up here, and then so we can squat. We're hammering the legs with no spinal loading. Bad idea. Remember, your discs are remodeling, the load-bearing structures in your spine are remodeling in a matter of months. Your muscles are remodeling in a matter of weeks, meaning we can get a disparity very quickly. And if you're training like that, you're only helping that disparity go further. And I would really caution you against doing such things. Man, I'm overrunning. Hopefully this is helpful for you guys. Then there is the hip thruster. And I want to demonstrate. Now, if you happen to be lucky enough to have a hip thruster machine, great. Maybe it doesn't apply as much, but most of you guys will be doing the good old barbell, which means you've got something like, excuse the sandwich truck outside, something like this, and you're going to watch what I'm having to do. And then I've got my little duck weights. I've got to get my barbell. I've got to put it down here. And then I've got to put the weight on. Now, if you, generally speaking, people use hip thrusters and do certain exercises like leg press precisely because they can use lots of weight. And so I would be cautioning against that. Not to say I haven't done hip thrusters, not to say Lara doesn't do hip thrusters or hasn't done hip thrusters in the past and enjoyed it, but you're using a lot of weight, right? So you're probably not putting 5 kilo plates on, you're probably putting 20s on, which means you're probably not doing it like I'm doing it right now. And then once we finish the setup, let's just suppose I put a bunch of weights on there. Not to mention the fact that I've got to dismount and disassemble all of them afterwards. Then I sit down, and I sit down in the wrong position because I'm silly. And I slide that back over, and then I go into my hip thruster. Boom, I do my set, and I sit down, whack a whopping great flexion through my lumbar spine, even if I'm trying my best. Straighten my legs out, roll the bar off, and now I get up, right? Does that look like the kind of helpful thing for your lower back to have to do, especially after you've hammered the muscles into high heaven, and now they're all stiff and pumped, and you're walking around like this, which is a great feeling to have if you're used to training, right? Not so good for the lower back. So you're tripping yourself up. Guys, leave, and then there's the dismount, right? You've just done 140 kilos on your hip thrusters, whatever it may be. You've got 6 20s either side of the bar, or you've put, even more 10s, and now you've got to disassemble that and take it all the way back. Not worth it. Not worth it. For the marginal increase in gains it's going to put through the glutes, just do squats. Just do squats. If you've got a machine, fair enough. But what can we do instead of this? If you really want to work that range and get a little bit of a fire out at the end, right? I can't do this on the Vulture, but I'll do it with another band just to show you guys. Do a cable pull through. So this is specifically from Maria as a way of getting around this, being able to do something, because you don't want to be doing maximal spinal loading every session, right? We talk about those of you guys that get to the late stages of the program when you're training normally again, phase 4, you want to have maybe 1 or 2 sessions where we're doing high levels of spinal loading each week, but not more than that. And so this can help you work that area. If you want to do it as like an exhaustion exercise or a burnout, so to speak, to finish up the glutes, you just take a cable, a low cable, and then you can do a hip thruster from here. Let it come back and thrust through. Let it come back, thrust through. Obviously neutral spine, right? You can do that. It's exactly the same movement. So do that instead. Or focus on deeper step-ups or single leg hip hinges. Just think about this, because remember, it feels better, but it's still remodeling. It's still adapting to strain. So we have to remember that. Otherwise, we'll catch ourselves out. Guys, I'm going to run through the last of these comments here. Hopefully this is helpful. What have we got? Can facet joint arthropathy be reversed, or is that further? It depends. If we've got kind of like hypertrophy occurring there, the joints are going to be enlarged. They are enlarged. You're mainly looking at stabilizing the soft tissues around that segment. What else have we got? Spinal surgeon said that he is very happy with my MRI results. He said, I don't need surgery. Fantastic. Referred me again for physio through the NHS, but I said I've started physio, started the program yesterday. Awesome. It's good that they've given you all clear in that regard, Magdalena. Do you think Jefferson curls do eventually serve a purpose once the back is healthy for extra resilience? Okay, so what have we got? If you are a student at university and have basically all the time in the world, sure. But you've got to meet these targets, right? Number 1, you have to squat your body weight for squats for 10 reps without aggravation. Without any aggravation whatsoever, have no qualms with doing that. Then you need to understand that you do or do not have appropriate levels of hip mobility for a normal human being. Most of you guys that hit that first target will not hit that second. So you need to then work on your hip mobility. If after that you've got appropriate spinal loading capacity and you've got appropriate normal levels of hip mobility, and there's a case and you have the time to do so, sure, go and do Jefferson curls. But they're one of those useless exercises that serves a very specific purpose. I could probably do, even I shouldn't really bother with them because I need to improve my hip mobility first. And I don't have all the time in the day. So apart from the person that's got basically like 5 hours a day or 6 hours a day or 3 hours a day, that doesn't have kids, doesn't have a job, doesn't have this, that, the other, that can afford to spend all that time in the gym every day, sure, you could go and do Jefferson curls if you hit those targets. You know, for example, I could make the case for me that there's a likelihood that I need to strengthen in that funny range because doing jiu-jitsu, there's a chance of a 100-kilo male jumping on my back and I'm in a funny position, and strengthening the vulnerability would make sense, right? Most of you guys don't do jiu-jitsu. Most of you guys don't have the time. Most of you guys will take a long time to hit those previous targets. All too often, the person just goes, oh, I'll do some more flexion in the Jefferson curl way prematurely. There's no upside of doing that. Sure, again, you might get away with it. Fantastic. I'm so happy. All that I care is that you guys get better. That's the only thing that matters. But it's not, I think it's not a smart move. I don't think it's a smart, it's a high risk, high risk. So I don't think there's any real benefit. Again, most people are working out to try and stay fit and healthy, and they have a life. They have family. They have this, that, the other, right? I would love to be able to go to the gym more, but I don't have the time. I've got jiu-jitsu I'm interested in, etc. Gone are the days where I can spend an hour and a half in the gym and then go and do jiu-jitsu, right? Or do something else like that, right? I can't do that anymore. I don't have the time. And so if you do, fair enough. But be really honest with yourself as to whether you actually have that time or not. Magdalena said, I cannot do both in the same time. I did the last physio and it was a big mistake. Yeah, you got to be going through a good place. And if you're following rehab, you have to ask the question, what value is the physio bringing? Now, if they're doing hands-on treatment, that can be helpful. But if they're not, yeah, never mind. I'd leave it out. Would you suggest a follow-up MRI after 8 months? No, I would not suggest a follow-up MRI after 8 months. If you want to do a follow-up MRI, I would give yourself 18 months, 12, 18 months, maybe a little bit longer, and have made objective change in the tissues. Mike, I said, I only started yesterday in the program. Will these exercises help me with my right shoulder blade because I'm in lots of pain? The right shoulder blade, if we're talking about up here specifically, I would suggest looking at the neck. We have an article on the whiplash. I would look at that first because it might well be an unrelated issue. But certainly improving the posture and those sorts of things are going to be helpful. Big mistake to make on the exercises is pushing your head forwards like that. That will strain the neck and possibly be related to the cause of what's going on in the neck. What else have we got here? Measure said, what are your favorite success stories and less typical experiences you really like? I think Janet's story is really cool. That was a spondylolisthesis case. I think Annie's story is really cool, primarily just because of what it shows in terms of the insight into sort of the inner workings of the NHS in terms of her particular circumstances. I thought that was really interesting. Those would probably be my two favorite. But there's too many of, not everyone feels comfortable about sharing all of that stuff. And I think some of the really cool ones are the ones that happen in the background, the ones that happen in the members area. And that's why it's so cool to see that stuff. We had one in the comments earlier on. Who was it? Let me find it. Aiden, 8mm disc herniation, numb everything, playing football again after every week at 43 years old. That's really cool. Articles on the website. So that's on the main website. So backinshapeprogram.com as opposed to the members website, which is app.backinshapeprogram.com. Down at the bottom, there's a section where it says like media covers or media coverage in there. There's a bunch of them actually. Guys, I'm going to wrap it up for today. Hopefully that's been helpful for you guys. We've overran by quite a substantial margin. I do hope it's been helpful. Those of you guys that are interested in the Black Friday deal, if you're on TikTok, check out the link in the profile page. Check out the story because there's a link there for you guys. If you're on YouTube, just go on the website. You'll find it. You'll find it soon enough. And if you're any of the members and you want to take advantage, guys, the sale ends this Sunday. We do not do Cyber Monday sales. We do one sale every year. It only happens for Black Friday. It ends on the 30th of November every year. It is the best opportunity to get involved in the program, or if you're one of our members and you want to switch over to the yearly billing, you will make a substantial saving on the membership. And as of December 1st, the price is changing for the membership. So it is going up. So it's your chance to secure your membership fees at the current rate with the best offer we've had all year. So guys, hopefully that's been helpful for you guys. Check out if you need any more information. If you're members, reach out to us. We can give you the details. And thanks to all of you guys that joined. Thanks to all of you guys that asked questions. We will be there in the members area group all through today and the weekend, etc., as we always are, guys, to help you guys. And we'll probably be live again on Monday. Thanks for joining, guys. Have a good one. Bye.